Joining us now, Minnesota Attorney General Keith Ellison. AG Ellison, thank you so much for joining us. First, I want to get your reaction to your fellow Attorney General being indicted this week, Letitia James. What's your reaction?
It is disgraceful. It is a trashing of the American justice system. I mean, let's just keep in mind, Tom Homan reportedly took $50,000 on a promise to connect people with contracts when he got back in the Trump administration. Now, the officials in the Trump administration won't even admit that he took the $50,000, won't even deny that he took the $50,000. And at the same time, we have James Comey and many more threats along the way. This is a trashing of the American justice system. It always comes with authoritarian takeover, and you can add it on to every other thing, including when he said he hates his opponents at a funeral, no less, and then says to a group of generals that he wants to use American cities as training grounds. So we now are in a whole new territory. American institutions must stand up, must hold, so we can maintain and preserve American democracy.
Go ahead, Jackie.
Attorney General, I want to ask you a little bit about the other side of the National Guard deployment issue, which is sort of the ICE component of this, which obviously there's a lot of theorizing that Trump is putting National Guard there so that ICE can better do their jobs. I'm wondering if you feel like attorneys generals across the U.S. and in places where we're seeing a large ICE presence are doing enough to litigate ICE presence. We see a lot of lawsuits in action. You know, Tim Walz, as we noted in our opening, had said that you're already prepared to take court action to follow all the laws and challenge the National Guard deployment. But, you know, Minnesota also shares a border with Canada, like Chicago does, which has been part of the rationale from the administration of why there can be an ICE force. Are you in touch with any of your fellow AGs to discuss potential legal recourse to get ICE out of communities?
Well, we are in touch with fellow AGs on a regular basis. But you have to understand, we as attorney generals have to uphold what the law is as written. We can't do things because they're morally repugnant, damaging to truth. We have to use the law as our tool. And so where we have been able to hold ICE accountable and the president accountable on his misuse of ICE, we've done so. In fact, the president tried to conditionalize federal emergency management dollars based on us converting our local law enforcement into his ICE agents. And we took him to court on that. We've been successful, and we've gotten orders written in our favor. But the federal government has historically had jurisdiction over immigration matters. And so we have tools. We will use them to the full extent of our ability. And we have people thinking about how we can protect and preserve American law all the time. But one of the realities of the split of power, the sharing of power between the federal and state authorities, is that the feds traditionally have had greater power in the area of immigration.
Attorney General Ellison, when you and I last spoke back in May, you know, we had a long-ranging discussion about the anniversary of the murder of George Floyd. But in that conversation, you proactively brought up the issue of being watchful and mindful of President Trump doing things in such a way that would give him an excuse to invoke the Insurrection Act. Now, here we are months later. Listen to what the president had to say about that very issue on Monday and Tuesday of this week. Watch.
The Insurrection Act, under what conditions or terms would you?
Well, I'd do it if it was necessary. So far, it hasn't been necessary, but we have an Insurrection Act for a reason. If I had to enact it, I'd do that. Yeah, well, it's been invoked before, as you know. If you look at Chicago, Chicago's a great city where there's a lot of crime. And if the governor can't do the job, we'll do the job. It's all very simple.
When you and I spoke in May, you said his invocation of the Insurrection Act would be the whole ball game. Hearing what the president just said, how close do you think we actually are to him invoking the Insurrection Act, and what will he use as his excuse? Because he's already saying that Portland, quote, is almost an insurrection.
Well, it won't take much. It's all made up for him. He makes up criminal prosecutions against James and Comey and apparently now others as well. He doesn't need a meaningful factual basis to invoke the Insurrection Act, claiming something's an insurrection or civil disorder. But that's why cities need to make sure that we are documenting that city municipal authorities are handling whatever everyday problems cities have. But it will not take a lot. He does not, and it may not take anything at all, just how he happens to wake up, on what side of the bed he wakes up in the morning. But Jonathan, I will point out that Trump is predictable. They have telegraphed everything they're going to do. They actually wrote it all out in Project 2025. You know, the thing he knew nothing about during the election.
Right.
And so we're in a position to really kind of anticipate what they're going to do. And I'm proud that the courts have been holding up and AGs have been enforcing the law to the extent we have jurisdiction.
AG, language matters, and the language that politicians use really matters, and the way that they describe groups of people changes the way other Americans see them, and it helps change policy. I want you to listen to both Kristi Noem, the Secretary of Homeland Security, and the AG of the United States, Pam Bondi, at an Antifa roundtable earlier this week.
Just like we did with cartels, we're going to take the same approach, President Trump, with Antifa.
This network of Antifa is just as sophisticated as MS-13, as TDA, as ISIS, as Hezbollah, as Hamas, as all of them. They are just as dangerous. They have an agenda to destroy us, just like the other terrorists we've dealt with for many, many years.
For our viewers, Antifa means anti-fascist. It's also not a group in the same way that we think of organizations, right? There's no leader. It is more of an ideology. So what do you think they're signaling when they are saying they are as sophisticated or as the same as MS-13 and TDA, which they have talked about wanting to eradicate out of the United States? What does that language tell you they are trying to signal to the American people?
Well, I want to caution people to not just dismiss this as utter stupidity, because it is utter stupidity. It's fact-free, it's lies, it's ridiculous, but it is dangerous for that very reason. Because if there really is no Antifa as an institution organization, then anybody who's associated with Antifa-like ideas, can be persecuted. All you have to do is say, prove you're not Antifa. Well, how can you prove a negative? And suddenly they're just going to be able to use that to justify suppressing speech, arresting people, deploying ICE, deploying National Guard, deploying military. So the fact that there is nobody even knows what it is. The first person I ever heard use the word Antifa was Donald J. Trump, when he was going on about how there were good people on both sides in Charlottesville. That's the first time I ever heard anyone use the term. So now it's this amorphous thing, and if nobody's really Antifa, then everybody could be. And the reason you can't find them is because they're just that crafty. And so this is something that we all need to be worried about. I know that there will be people, particularly in the legitimate world, who deals in facts and issues and things like that, is going to be saying, "Oh, how dumb this is." Be careful. They know it's dumb. They know it's lies. They're using it as a pretext to push forward illegitimate power that the president is usurping from just about everybody.
Yeah, go ahead, Jay.
Really quick. Why do you think President Trump hasn't deployed National Guard to a place like Minneapolis yet?
Well, I think that he's got people higher on his list of vindictiveness, right? I mean, he wants to get Chicago. He wants to get after Portland. There's people he wants to get a little bit more than he wants to get us, but I can assure you that, last time he was president, he put up a tweet that said something to the effect of liberate Minnesota and Michigan and some other states.
Yeah.
So we just better be aware and I hope he never does deploy troops here. I hope he never does try to illegitimately and illegally take the power away from our governor to deploy the National Guard. But we're ready if he does. And we have every reason to believe that he just might. So that's what it's about.
A.G. Ellison, we've seen him do this over and over again. We know that he might do it. You guys say that it's possible. What does it look like to prepare for them to possibly send the National Guard to Minneapolis or whatever city in Minnesota? What does that look like? What are you doing? What is the governor doing?
Well, obviously, we're going to have to show to a court that, look, there is no basis for it. There's no disorder. There's no mass disorder there, and there's nothing going on here that local and state authorities cannot handle. But we have a in control situation here. We don't need your help, Mr. President. And so we need people who will say that. And they don't need to be making any kind of a political comment. In fact, we don't want them to make one. We just want them to make a law enforcement expert and assessment of the situation, which has been going on in places like Portland and Chicago, saying, look, Mr. President, thanks, but no thanks. We really don't need your help here. This is a usurpation and encroachment on democratic norms.